How did this project just get started?
Well, the project was started by the Canadian government recognizing that they had a shortage of skilled workers. I'm not sure whether this was in the mining camps first or the logging industry, but in either case, what the government did was go out to the DP camps in Europe and recruited men for the lumbering industry or logging and the mining, and that scheme seemed to work quite efficiently. Canadian Jewish Congress picked up the thought that if there was a shortage of workers in Canada, there must be thousands among the camps that would fit into the garment industry, which was a predominantly operated by Jews, that there would be a vehicle that would fit in with government policy and yet establish one way that they could bring in whatever government would permit. And there was also an added precedent to that, in that there was a firm, I think it was in St. George de Beauce, making shirts or some form of apparel. They were non-Jews, but they of their own accord got the government to permit, I don't know, 50 or 60 people. And with that as a further precedent, in other words, all the political reasons that the government might have had for restricting immigration could be changed to suit the purely what you might call the economic needs of the country at the time. And so Congress, with the aid of industry, then proceeded to make representations to the government. Officially, of course, it was industry, because the Canadian Jewish Congress was not an employer of labor and could not act as a spokesman. And there were the usual requirements of the guarantee of jobs. I mean, it wasn't a matter of bringing in people and then had to seek jobs. And so there was the question of, we got employers to sign the requisite documents that they could use 6 workers, 12 workers, and that was task number 1. Number 2 was to, the government through UNRWA would pay for the transportation of the people, but once having brought them to Canada, it was up to some bona fide organization to undertake the housing and seeing that these people were adequately settled without government expense or responsibility. In fact, the same procedure to a considerable extent was followed with the scheme to bring in the boat people here after the Vietnam War, but that was really, you might say, the model. And that represented quite a tall organization. You must remember that we're talking of a less organized society then of, what would this be, about 40 odd years ago, 40 years ago. And it involved the Jewish immigrant society, guys, and I would say that Congress played the most important part in that project. I use the word importance because they were the crystallizing body. Now, each segment who did things deserved great credit. And it couldn't have been done also without the full cooperation of the unions, because this is a highly unionized industry. And then you had to iron out the problems with government itself. Well, we were one of those opportunities which rise from time to time. A man by the name of McNamara was the Deputy Minister of Labor, I think.
Yeah.
And he was a very sympathetic spirit. He came from Winnipeg, I think, and one of the labor men that went on this mission was from Winnipeg, and there was a sort of a kinship.
Herbst.
Herbst, that's right. Remember him well. There was Herbst from Winnipeg. There was Shane from Montreal, who was I guess we'd call him the executive director of the ILG.
Mm-hmm.
And there was a man by the name of Solomon who represented the manufacturers in Montreal. And from Toronto we had Sam Poslin representing the women's, and myself from the men's. What is that, Executive 5?
Mm-hmm.
That's right. There was that made up the body that represented a combination of labor and employers and management. It was without the help of Congress assuring that the question of housing would somehow be overtaken, because no one manufacturer, no group could undertake to do all the social implications of a group like that coming.